Hey everyone, this is Ty the TV Guy back with another Stranger Things video. Now that the Season 5 release dates have been announced, I'm going to be ramping up my discussion of Stranger Things theories, rankings, and key discussion points heading into the final season. That starts today, where I pose 5 essential questions about Stranger Things and its plot that must be addressed in the final season for a satisfactory ending. Before I get into these, comment the burning questions you need answered in the 5th and final season. Okay, to start out, my first question is, why is the Upside Down stuck in 1983 on the day Will was taken? To me, this is the most obvious question that exists after the conclusion of Season 4, other than the really obvious aspects like how the Hawkins crew will take down Vecna and stuff like that. This discovery of the Upside Down being stuck in time was made when Nancy, Robin, Eddie, and Steve retreated to the Wheeler house to get weapons in the Upside Down, as Nancy claimed to have a couple stashed in her room. When they visited the Upside Down version of the Wheeler house, however, there were no guns to be found, and Nancy quickly noticed a troubling trend. Everything in her room was reverted back to the way it was a few years back, and she specifically finds that the last entry in her journal or diary was November 6th, 1983. Of course, the November 6th date has famously become synonymous with the show as it is now touted as Stranger Things Day in real life, but within the show it is the exact date Will goes missing. Once Nancy notices this striking difference in the Upside Down, she realizes that everything in her house is exactly as it was about 3 years ago in 1983. Of course, before the chaos of Will's disappearance and everything that ensued, Nancy had no weapons at her house, which made things a bit trickier for our older teen group in the Upside Down in Season 4. The real fallout of this revelation is likely yet to be seen, though. A more important set of questions arises as we continue into the final season this fall. Why is the Upside Down stuck in 1983 on the day Will was taken? The basic question. But then also, what does this tell us about the nature of the Upside Down and its origins? To me, this piece of information that Nancy and the crew uncovered in her notebook will be pivotal to concluding the show and completing the lore surrounding the Upside Down. One can assume that the Upside Down was disrupted and has been in some sort of time loop ever since Eleven made contact with the Demogorgon and Will was taken on that day. At that point in time in 1983, it may have been the only time or one of the rare instances in which elements of the Upside Down and the Right Side Up interacted and or crossed over in such a way. However, that assumption alone doesn't give us the entire story, and I hope the Duffer Brothers expand on this revelation and what it means for the Upside Down extensively in Season 5. I would love to say I have a crazy prediction as to what all this could mean, but I'm really not all that sure outside of it being a pivotal event in terms of the two worlds colliding. The next question I pose is, how will Max wake up from her coma, and what will be the consequences of having been in it? Max originally dies in the final episode of Season 4 before Eleven brings her back to life, essentially restarting her heartbeat and reviving her. Among many fans, the decision to bring Max back was controversial. Max had a historically great season in Season 4, and many thought her apparent death scene was perfect. From the amazing acting to the overwhelming emotions this scene evoked due to many character-related factors, this scene undeniably appeared to be one of the show's best. However, it is rather quickly reversed just a few minutes later in the episode, as the Duffer Brothers decide to bring Max back to life with a never-before-seen utilization of Eleven's powers. Many people see this as a sort of cop-out for the writers, as they may have gotten nervous about their decision to kill off such an awesome character, played by one of the show's very best actors, so they kind of plot-armored her up and kept her kind of around for Season 4 as she enters in a coma. Here are my thoughts. I absolutely love Max, especially in Season 4, and I'm super excited that Sadie Sink will be in Season 5 because they obviously didn't keep her around just to have her laying in a hospital bed all season. And I do think that whatever they do with her story-wise will be quite cool and connect to Eleven and Vecna in some large way. With that being said, I do think they got cold feet, so to speak, with this decision, and may have been better off just leaving that scene be, as one of the best and most devastating in the show's history. However, that's really not relevant at this point because Max is still technically alive heading into Season 5, and we know this. So, I think it's important that they do an amazing job with her story, because if the conclusion to her arc falls flat, it will forever be looked back upon by fans as one of the bigger mistakes this show made. Looking ahead, my prediction is that Max will wake up from her coma in the middle of the season, probably around episode 4 or 5 at the conclusion of the first volume. This is pretty much a foregone conclusion, but what is much less clear is how and in what state she's going to wake up in. To me, there are a few possibilities. 1. She is controlled by Vecna and it's obvious, meaning she looks possessed and acts unlike herself, things of that nature. 2. She's controlled by Vecna, but he is somewhat dormant within her until she is called into action, kind of like what we saw with Will in Season 2. Or 3, she wakes up as the real Max and is not controlled by Vecna. In this scenario, she would still certainly have some connection to him though, like maybe having developed true sight or some other type of minor power from having survived such a traumatic experience. These are the three ways I could see it going, but in reality, I'm probably wrong with all three. It's important to remember that when 11 tries to mentally contact Max in the final moments of Season 4, she cannot find her. Max's consciousness is gone currently, and what exactly this means is very up in the air. Not to mention her very impaired physical status, as she will conceivably be blind even once she awakes, at least, I would think. So the possibilities are endless for her in Season 5, and I personally think it's going to be a rather dark scenario for her until the group helps remove her from Vecna's grasp late in the season. Alrighty, next I have another question that's pretty obvious and that must be addressed, which is what is Will's full connection to Vecna? I won't go through the full history, but of course if you've seen the show, much of the first 2 seasons was about the search for Will's physical self, and then focusing in more on the search for Will's mental self, or soul, as he's basically possessed for much of Season 2. There's much that is still a mystery surrounding Will's disappearance in Season 1, from the exact moment he was taken in the tool shed not being shown in its entirety, to the specifics of why he was taken of all people, to how he survived and what he endured in the Upside Down. All of this is still largely unknown to the audience. One thing I do know is that the Duffer Brothers and Stranger Things have posted pictures of a younger Will character on the set of Season 5, likely to play him in a series of flashback scenes similar to what they did with 11 in Season 4 to explore her past at Hawkins' lab and her relationship with 1. I fully expect this younger Will character to give us deeper insight into Will's perspective on the events of November 6th, 1983, and much of what he endured in Season 1 while waiting to be rescued. The information we gain in these flashbacks could help us as viewers understand how he survived, what he saw, and maybe even why he was taken by the Demogorgon that night. What we have witnessed the last couple of seasons is that even though he has no longer been the primary target, which has instead been characters like 11 and Max among others, he has maintained a sensation that can detect when Vecna or his army is nearby. At the end of Season 4, he even goes as far as explaining Vecna's current state to Mike. He tells Mike that Vecna is hurt, but he's still alive, and he's not ever going to stop until he gets what he wants. Will attributes his enhanced Vecna tingles to being back in Hawkins, and while that is undoubtedly true, it appears that these feelings he has have leveled up in a sense. In Season 3, other than being a mind flare radar detector, he didn't seem to have much more insight. To me, this signifies Will's growing capabilities, which I will tackle more in the next question, and affirms the Duffers' claims that Will's storyline will be among the most crucial in Season 5. I anticipate a fairly deep study into what exactly Will's connection to Vecna and the Upside Down is, and I can't wait to see it. Another big question is about 11, and it's simply, will 11 be powerful enough? And if not powerful enough by herself, will anyone have powers alongside her like Will or Max? To me, the answer to the first question has to be a resounding no. I do not think 11 can be expected to take down Vecna and what will likely be an army with him, as Nancy describes in the vision he showed her. Though I think we will see some of the most epic uses of her powers to date in this last season, I still don't think it will feel believable for her to do this all by herself as the only one with elevated abilities. The way I see it, there are 3 options. Bring back another kid from Hawkins' lab like 8, which I think would be rather unpopular and unrealistic at this point. The other 2 options are to uncover that Will or Max has yet to tap into their own powers or has developed them recently. Along with 11, Max and Will now have the biggest connection with Vecna at this point. To me, it would only make sense for one of them to gain powers and help 11 in the biggest fight of her life. To be clear, I don't think Will or Max will necessarily have powers in the same sense as 11. In other words, I don't think they'll necessarily have telekinesis, but I think they'll have some sort of elevated abilities that they've gained because of their experiences with Vecna and the Upside Down. This route would be much needed for the fight, and likely much more believable and emotionally riveting than the return of a controversial and largely forgotten about side character like 8. And we love you, Lucas, but I don't think fireworks are going to do the trick this time. Thank you all for watching to this point, and now I'd like to get to my final and most important question of all. Will the portal to the Upside Down ever be sealed permanently? This question remains the most important and telling for the conclusion of Stranger Things. The answer to it will determine how our favorite monster fighting characters will live out the rest of their lives, well, at least those that survive the events of Season 5. Will the Upside Down finally and officially be sealed off to give our surviving characters and the audience some final closure, or will this connection between worlds prove to be irrevocable? Season 4's conclusion is the only one that hasn't included a temporary separation of the right side up from the Upside Down. The Duffers decided to take the Empire Strikes Back route, as the Hawkins crew finally suffers a large defeat to end a season rather than suppressing the monster and at least temporarily closing the gates as they had in the past. This simple question would tell us so much if we only knew now, but we'll have to wait until New Year's Eve to know the true result. You want my prediction? I think the Upside Down being permanently sealed off is the only way to end a show that is so full of heart. I think our crew will come together and take this evil force down behind the firepower of 11 and another mystery helper, in my opinion. But I don't think it will come without its heartbreak, as I definitely think multiple key characters will meet their demise in the last few episodes of the show. Once again, I appreciate you all for watching and being curious about the conclusion of Stranger Things just like me, and I hope that all 5 of the essential questions I posed here in this video get adequately answered by the creators of the show. With 11, Max, Will, Vecna, his army, the military, and our whole Hawkins crew of geniuses and brave souls all in the mix, it should make for one epic showdown. That's all for this video. This is Ty the TV Guy signing off, over and out.